Hello, Matthew Williams here with a video to talk about the David Noakes case and the GC-MAF that he developed and has been giving to patients. Now, I know some other people have different views on this, and I know that other people have been discussing this matter, but I went in to see one day of the court case, and okay, I've only seen one day of the court case, but it was very revealing in many respects, because a number of things were brought up which are very black and white. They really are extremely black and white. Okay, the problem we have, whether or not GC-MAF is or is not a viable drug which can heal or cure, as it is claimed, a number of conditions, is kind of irrelevant, because the court case was not designed to discuss the efficacy of GC-MAF. The court case was designed to do one thing and one thing only, which was to see whether or not David Noakes, who developed GC-MAF, well, he didn't invent it, but he developed this version of GC-MAF, which he has been, by his own admission, giving to patients who allegedly have been cured. That is not why the court has convened. The court has convened to see whether or not he broke the law. And what law are we talking about? We're talking about medical licensing, whether you have a license to practice medicine, and whether or not you have a license to sell an untested medicine and use that on patients. Now, there are extremely clear laws as well as guidelines on how you are supposed to test a drug. Now, you or I can't just go out to a company and say, make me a substance, which they will do. Companies can quite easily make you substances and make you things which could be used as medicines, but aren't allowed to be because they haven't been tested. So if I was to say to a medicine company or a medical company, I need you to synthesize me X, Y, and Z, they don't really need to know why I need that. They could do that for me, and they don't have to actually say to me, now you're not going to go giving that to people or animals, are you? Because that's not why you've asked for a substance. So the fact that you could gather together a team of specialists, scientists, or even work with established labs, which are not part of your company, they're nothing to do with you, but you can go to them and you can say, I would like you to make me vitamin D. I would like you to make me vitamin C with this added to it. And they'll go, okay, you pay the bill, they give you the substance. Now, they don't tell you what you're meant to do with that substance. Okay, now if you go experimenting on animals or people without a license, then you've broken the law. And this is what the court case against David Noakes is about. And the comical, I have to say it's comical, laughable thing about this case is that David Noakes actually brought this down on his own head. I was quite shocked, because had David Noakes not approached, or it appears from what I understood, had David Noakes not actually approached the medical licensing board and said, I would like a license for my medicine, they wouldn't have known about him. they wouldn't have known who he was or what he was doing. But the whole thing of this case was brought about because I don't like to criticize, but I think it was, let's put it like this, a very, very unwise choice from David to have gone to them and said, can I have a license for my drug, please? And they didn't even say no. They didn't say no, you can't have a license for this drug. They actually said, fine. What drug is it? And he said, it's called GC-MAF. And they said, certainly, not a problem. Just deliver your paperwork. This is what we require. We require your clinical tests. We require your efficacy trials. We require your purity testing. We require your animal trials. We require your human trials, which have to be done in a clinical setting, done with usually double-blind procedures. So volunteers are allowed to come into certain medical centres, and some of them will get the drug and some of them will get a placebo. And then they test to see how it comes out of the blood, how it affects the liver, whether it crosses the blood-brain barrier, whether it stays in the system or whether it's flushed, the flush times, they do the blood work, they do the analysis. And then they have to repeat this again and again and again with different dose levels on different types of people who have possibly different metabolisms. And from this, you gain what is known as a clinical study. Clinical study, is done, and basically you'll have a report, and that report then forms part of your request for licensing. Now, if anything untoward was to happen during those trials, like some people were to have an adverse reaction, it would also give the person developing the medicine an opportunity to write up instructions for how this medicine could be administered, whether or not it has to be in smaller amounts, or whether, it's all the instructions that basically would have to go with that drug. And then that has to be assessed by the medical industry. That has to be assessed and weighed up as to whether or not it's a safe enough drug to go to market. Now, David Noakes contacted the medical licensing authorities and said, I want a license. And they said, where's your paperwork? And he said, I haven't got any. And they went, oh, that's a bit unusual. Haven't you got any paperwork? And he was like, no. And they said, well, how exactly do you expect us to proceed with giving you a license if you haven't got any paperwork? Which is quite a reasonable thing for them to ask, don't you think? And David said, well, I've got lots of people I've already been giving it to that say it works. And they said to him, really? Are you honestly telling us that you have been giving this medicine to people when it hasn't been tested in a clinical environment and it hasn't got any efficacy or purity, and we don't even know where you're sourcing the materials from? Could you even tell us where you're sourcing your materials from? Are there any active bacterias in this medicine? Are there any active live substances such as blood, plasmas, toxins, anything in this substance you could tell us about? And he said, well, we just make it and we give it to people. At which point, I think the licensing authority was like this. Oh my fucking God. who the hell is this person? And who the hell is this person to actually come to us expecting a medical license without any trials? Is this guy silly? Is this guy a full ticket? And they realized that the danger of what he was doing was very possible. Not necessarily a fact that this could be a dangerous substance, but the danger of it possibly being an uncontrolled and unregulated substance, which was being given out as a medicine and touted as a cure, right? Had no paperwork, no tests, no clinical trials, no anything. And that the person who was presenting this to them simply thought that because he says it's good, and lots of people, thousands of people apparently, have all benefited from it, who would all stand up and say, I have benefited from this, he thinks that that would trump and erase all the clinical procedures you would have to go to do with a normal drug trial. Mr. Noakes actually believed that by asking them for a medical license, on his word and say so, that they were going to give him a medical license. And they gave him every opportunity. They asked him repeatedly, please tell us what you have done with this drug. Please tell us how you have tested this drug. And they gave him every opportunity to provide that information. And he was unable to provide anything other than what is known as anecdotal evidence, which is he said, she said. Mrs. Jones said she felt better, which is not scientific. Because you can give Mrs. Jones, snuff, and you could tell Mrs. Jones this was a cure for brain tumours. She would take the snuff, and she'd say, oh, I'm feeling a lot better now. That's known as a placebo effect. Yes? Because the body reacts to positive news, negative news, and can actually heal itself to some degree by being told it is now healing. And when the body feels confident about itself healing, it can actually heal. So what you have to separate in science is anecdotal evidence, which is just, well, I felt a bit better for a few days, and oh yes, I think I felt better. Oh, I'm feeling a lot better now. Right? From, are you actually getting better because of the drug, or are you getting better because you may have just got better anyway? And the only way you can test that is with double-blind trials. This is what science is about. So unfortunately, Mr. Noakes actually did a big number plop on his own head by going to the licensing authority and expecting them to give him a license. Now, the naivety of that simple act, the naivety, and remember this word, naive, yeah? The naivety of that simple act is equivalent, I believe it's equivalent, to sticking your head in a lion's mouth and expecting it not to bite. It's like flicking a scorpion and expecting not to get stung. It's like going to the police with video camera evidence of you driving at 100 miles an hour and then expecting them not to give you a speeding ticket. That's what took place. And I know that a number of people right now are saying that it's very unfair that the authorities are hounding Mr. Noakes and telling him no, you can't have this drug. I don't think they have told him no. What they have said is, There is a procedure you follow, and if you follow the procedure, we'll quite happily give you a medical license for this drug. But you have to follow the procedure. So nobody at any time during that evidence session where I heard the man from the Medical Licensing Authority, he was not sinister, he was not nasty, he was not biased towards the medical industry. He simply said, we asked him for his evidence and he didn't have any scientific evidence. Nothing but anecdotal, which is true. The guy's not lying. There's no conspiracy. David Noakes has only got the anecdotal evidence from people who say they think they were healed. And they may well have been healed, but it's anecdotal. And I mean, I could probably find somebody, tomorrow, and if I gave them aspirin and told them it was magic fairy dust, they would probably say that it's cured their menstrual problems, and it's kind of like it's not scientific. It is not. So Mr. Noakes, why would he do something like that, right? And we come back to this statement about naivety, right? It takes possibly, I believe, a very special type of person to be that naive. Yes, it takes a very special type of person to be that naive. And I don't want to say this on video because it may not be what David Noakes and maybe not what his wife would like me to say at this point. But I had a chat with him, and it may even harm, but I believe it would help. I believe it would extremely help his case and possibly reduce his sentence, radically reduce his sentence. But there is an elephant in this room, okay? In that courtroom. There was an elephant in the courtroom. And I don't know whether that elephant has been talked about. But the elephant, trust me, is 12 foot tall and bloody large. Yes? And it's sitting in that courtroom, and it's not the MHRA, and it's not the defense or the prosecution. It is something surrounding Mr. Noakes. And it's not to do with him wanting to be a businessman and sell a cure. It's nothing to do with that. It's something to do with Mr. Noakes. And there is an elephant in that room. And I don't know whether that elephant has been discussed. And I hope it is, because as somebody pointed out on a video blog from the court, it is quite likely that Mr. Noakes could serve a custodial sentence for this. And I think this may be because he hasn't shown any remorse for what he's done. In fact, he's fighting it like I should have my medical license and I should be able to sell this drug. But the trouble is, it's like saying, I think I should have the right to murder somebody, and laws are in place to say that is wrong. You can't do that. And you could say after the fact, when the bull has left the gate, has left the field because the gate is left open, you could say, well, I think we should change the law to say murder is now legal. But, of course, the time to change that law is not when you're in court being prosecuted for it. The time to change that law is a very different arena. And this bull has left the gate. This bull has left the field. Okay? What David has actually done is absolutely 100% bang to rights illegal. Okay? Now, You can argue all day long. And he has admitted guilt. He said, guilty as charged. But his mitigating circumstances, this is my opinion, his mitigating circumstances are probably going to be something along the lines of, but I really wanted to help people, and I'm in the belief that it did help people. And the judge will probably, I imagine the judge will probably say, I think you're a little bit naive, sir, understatement, and you've gone about this in the complete wrong way. In fact, I don't think the judge will say this, but I think this has been approached arse backwards. Yes, arse backwards. Okay, number one, a lot of what Mr. Noakes was trying to do could have been done privately, behind closed doors, nobody needing to know, hush hush, and then it wouldn't have probably been such a problem. But because Mr. Noakes has decided to be extremely public with what he does, so public in fact that he went and asked for a medical license, which alerted the authorities to the fact that what he was doing was wrong, this has brought the shit down on his head. That's what caused him to have his bank accounts frozen, his passports taken off him, and his wife. The reason for that is because of what he has done. Okay, we can argue till we're blue in the face, right, that he should have the right to do that. But if David Noakes is given the right to develop a drug without medical trials, then everybody in this country can develop drugs without medical trials. And then you're going to have drugs like thalidomide sent to market, right, producing people with stunted arms, and stunted legs and growth problems. And nobody will be able to say anything about that because the people who developed thalidomide, they said it was great. And that's all that counts, because they said it was great, and that's all that counts. And guess what? That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen in a sensible world, because we all know just what Frankenstein monstery is going to come out of medical cures going to market without being tested. So is David going to change the law by going into court and saying, yes, I'm guilty, but I'm a really good person and I've been helping people? The judge is going to say, irrelevant. You might be the nicest person in the world. You might be the sort of guy that I would let my kids go and stay with on a weekend, yeah? But it doesn't change the fact. Here's the law. You stepped way beyond it and broke it. And not just a bit, a lot. You were selling this cure and calling it a cure. It was untested. You have absolutely no right to do that. But he could have done it quietly, couldn't he? But he didn't. He decided to be very vocal about it and then contact the authorities himself and do a number on himself. So there's only one person I think we have to blame here for David Noakes' downfall. And it's not the MHRA, medical authorities, and it's not the medical licensing people. They're simply doing their job. Their job is to stop this sort of behaviour happening. And if Mr. Noakes had approached this correctly from an investment point of view, gathered investors, taken that drug to clinical trials, trialled it properly with volunteers with double-blind trials, he may well have got his licence if there was any proof to what he was saying to be true. He could have got his licence. But simply going out there and throwing this stuff into the market and getting people to take it when it hasn't been tested in a non-clinical, a non-regulated way, unfortunately will bring down the full weight of the law on you. And that's what's going to happen. Now, I think there's a way, there would possibly be a way out of this for Mr. Noakes, but from what I understand, from what's been relayed, has been said in the court case, Mr. Noakes is adamant that he wants to and would still continue to provide this drug as a cure. And that, unfortunately, is like waving a red bag or red flag to a bull. The judge is now probably not going to have any sympathy with Mr. Noakes at all. Zero sympathy. Because part of the sentencing procedure is to find out whether somebody is actually sorry for what they've done, understands what they've done is wrong. Because let's face it, sometimes you can not realise you've broken a law. You cannot realise that. But once it's explained to you, you've broken a law. If you then say, I accept I broke the law, I'm sorry, and I'll try better next time and we'll do this the right way, the judge would then probably show you some sympathy. But if you stand up and say, no, I'm adamant, I'm right, and the law is wrong, then the judge will probably not have any sympathy with you at all, and probably will throw the book at you. And this is possibly, only my opinion, I think this is possibly what could happen. And I'm a little bit worried that some of this will, by some of the conspiracy community, of which I am part, I believe in conspiracies, this will be reported as David Noakes versus the medical authorities, where they were being unfair to him. I don't think they are being unfair to him. There's a way to do things and there's a way not to do things. And if you want to go do things that you shouldn't be doing, you should do them quietly, like taking drugs and speeding down the motorway at 100 miles an hour. Yeah, these are not things that you should proudly show evidence for and then expect nothing to happen, really. So unfortunately, I think Mr. Noakes is going to get hammered, and that's a sad thing. I think he's going to get hammered, and my advice to him would be, as I told his wife, my advice would be, use your best defense here, right? Which I'm not going to discuss on here. Use your best defense. You have one. You really do. You really do. You have an excellent defense, if only you will use it. But I don't think they're going to, somehow. I think they want to stand up and be martyrs on this cause. I hope I'm wrong. I think they want to be martyrs. And if they were to only use their best defense, they could probably get away with maybe not a jail sentence, a custodial. And that would mean that David Noakes could get his life back into order. He could regroup. He could re-establish himself from a monetary point of view, get himself back on his feet, and then maybe do the most sensible thing that he possibly could do, which would be to go to somewhere like Thailand or India, where he's not going to have these sorts of problems with things like regulatory authorities, yes? And he could operate in a very, very different regime. But this country is not that place. So sadly, I think we're going to see someone thrown to the wolves here. And anyway, thank you very much for watching. And I've tried to do this in such a way as to not offend those who have slightly differing opinions on this. But I think this was done very much arse backwards. And I mean, I could say I'm slightly guilty because I mean I've been part of events which have helped film and promote this story. which on the face of it, you kind of think, oh, good one, guy. Yeah, good, go guy, go, you know, cure those people. But in the cold light of day, this is a touchy subject. It's a very touchy subject, and when you're dealing with medicines and the law, you have to be a doctor or you have to be a professional, and there's ways to do things. Anyway, you know the story. I'm not. I'm even thinking of possibly popping back to the court case to see the sentencing, to see the summing up and the sentencing. But I don't think from what I could see that Mr. Noakes was being treated unfairly by the court. In fact, completely the opposite, and it was a very, very calm, very collected, very factual presentation of you broke this law, you broke this law, you broke this law, you broke this law. Breaking the law all the way down the line. Any challenge to that? No. You did do those things, didn't you? Yep. And are you sorry? Nope. Would you do it again? Yeah. Okay. Here's your sentence. I'm just wondering whether it'd be worth going back to have a look at that. And I don't laugh mockingly. I laugh in disbelief. Really. So, okay, there we are. There it is. And I'm sorry if this upsets some people who were believing that this should be a rally cry for allowing untested drugs. But I think we have to be a little bit careful with how we deal with these things. And if you're going to supply them like that, they shouldn't be called drugs and they shouldn't be called cures, and you should probably market them as makeup, cosmetics, yeah. Because the moment you use the word drug, medicine, you got yourself a problem. So thanks very much for watching.